welcome in. We are doing our first ever multi-stream with Meeting a Meeting. So I'm so excited. This is awesome. This is awesome. Carol, thank you so much for being here today. How are you
Thank
this morning?
you. Good. Thank you for inviting me. I'm doing pretty good, actually. Can't complain.
Yeah, good. You look all bright and cheery. I just got to say, I love your studio. It's so pretty. I love
Thank
the green.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I've got to figure out until I get to where I'm going. I got to figure out how to do like some kind of cool background, so it's
Yeah.
not just the hotel.
Yeah. You'll figure it
So
out. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so let's see. I kind of have a hard time seeing the. Oh, okay, we're gonna have to do this. You're gonna have to act like somebody if you're gonna be up here. All right. They can't help themselves. They don't do a single thing all morning long. And then the second I sit down and start doing this, it's like, it's like when your kids were little and you would get on the phone and then all of a sudden, like, there they are and they need everything.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yes.
no, I got prepared before I have done. I was going to do a little bit of a roll call, but honestly, because I'm on my phone, I can only see one comment at a time. So I see Ben. So Carol, if you see anybody, there's Kristen.
Yeah.
Plant Freak is behind the scenes for us. So Carol, if you can see anybody and you want to do a little roll
Yeah.
call, that's awesome.
Hello, Kristen Melinda, Blessed Your Crochet, Ben, Sandy Wandy. Let's see. Ben. Hello, Nancy Bunch. Hello, Nicola. Is that how we say it? I hope I said that right. Let's see who else we got here. Yeah, I think we're all caught up. If I
Awesome.
missed anybody, I apologize.
Yeah, no, if I missed anybody, I just can't see you because I'm on my phone and I can only see one comment at a time. My computer doesn't have a very good camera. Otherwise, I would use my laptop, but the camera is not clear at all. And so, I want y'all to be able to see my face. Well, we have a couple other people who might be hopping on, special, secret guests. So we'll let's see how long we're 3 minutes in. We can go ahead and get started. And then if they hop on, then we'll just bring them up to speed. So I'm super excited about this because we're talking today about taking on too much and what that looks like and how that can actually be detrimental to not only yourself but your end goal, right? If let's bring it home a little bit. We talk a lot about like addiction and compulsive behaviors and everything, but let's bring it into real life. Like, let's bring it into our work, into our jobs, into our homes. When we take on too much, we burn ourselves out. But not only that, we don't allow the people around us to grow. So if you're trying to grow, say, a business, and you're doing everything, you're not giving little kingdoms to the people around you to grow and cultivate and turn into something beautiful for themselves that they can carry on, that they can be proud of. And ultimately what happens is you take on too much, you're not delegating, you burn yourself out, and then you kind of become tyrannical, right? And then you get crotchety and you really kind of wonder, why is no one helping me? Why am I doing all of this? I'm having to do this on myself. Well, you're having to do it all yourself because in the early stages, in the beginning, you didn't give people an opportunity to grow with you. And because for whatever reason, and those can be trauma responses, right? It can be past trauma. I know for me, a lot of my reactions are trauma responses. It's just easier for me to do it myself because in my old situation, when I did it myself, I was the one that got the brunt of whatever was coming. And I felt like I was protecting everybody else. And that might have been true in that situation. But the situation that I'm in now, I don't have to do that. I don't have to protect everybody. I don't have to like be the savior, right? And I use that term very loosely. I'm not trying to, like offend anybody. But and one of the things I'm learning is that if you can actually get further if you bring people in and you share your dream, you share your vision, you share your goals, then people are on board and they can grow, and then they have the confidence to make decisions and grow themselves. And I think when we take that away from people, we're really kind of cutting them off at the knees, and and it's not beneficial for anybody. And so I think that that's kind of how I see it. Ben says limiting beliefs serve us as children, not so much when we are adults. And that is so true. Carol, what do you think about taking on too much and what that looks like for you?
Well, like you said, it can be a trauma response in that there's this compulsion to want to control everything and the way everything goes. And it has to be just a certain way because you kind of grew up with this feeling maybe, or were in a situation where maybe the only control you did have was this, that, or the other particular thing.
Right.
But yeah, and inviting others to, sharing your dream is risky.
Yeah.
Be real.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, no risk, no reward.
Right. And I think too, like to me, how I see it, and you guys are going to see, I'm sorry, my nose is running a little bit. You guys are going to see pretty clearly, I come from a business background, right? So I have a degree in business and marketing. So a lot of times I refer to things that way. But, to bring it closer to home, I also grew up on a ranch. And one of the things that my dad taught me was, sometimes you have to give the horse his head, meaning you've got to just let go of the reins and let the horse go to keep yourself safe, because ultimately that horse isn't going to intentionally hurt himself, right? So if you're in a dangerous situation, sometimes the best response is, instead of pulling up and trying to rein it all in and hang on real tight, sometimes you have to just kind of let it go. And you have to just trust that. And that's something that always stuck with me too. Because, I think it's really, like you said, it's really easy to get into that compulsion. And then and ultimately, me personally, I don't want to create something that can't continue on beyond me. And let's take a look at the boat. So Tommy has created the boat. It was an amazing thing. We all have made connections. Look at all of us starting channels. Look at all of us venturing out into things that we might not have ever ventured out into had we not been encouraged. And I know for me personally, Carol, you were a huge encouragement. Tommy was a huge encouragement to me. So many people were like, you've got to do this. Why are you not doing this? Well, I didn't do it because I was terrified. And I thought, who's going to want to listen to me? But, that's you guys also encouraging the people around you to grow. And when the people around you can grow, they can be better people, right?
Yeah.
And I think that and Spanx talked a little bit about it last night, was setting boundaries. And that's an important part too, boundaries to protect ourselves, boundaries to, even allow how we're treated, or how if you're in a business situation, how we're allowing our team to be treated. If if your thing is, well, I'm gonna, like most of you guys know, Stasia is my producer. She does a lot of stuff to help Carol as well. And if we like reined her in so tight and we're like, no, you can't have any time off and you can't do this, like she's gonna burn fast and bright for a little while, and then she's gonna burn out, and then she's gonna lose that connection that
Mhm.
was fostered through needing a meeting for her coming out of her situation to be able to reconnect. So,
Yeah.
I think that we should look at it on a global, like not global, but as a collective, as a group, and I think sometimes it's really hard to get out of your own way,
Yeah.
and it can be really difficult. Have
Yeah.
you, Carol, have you struggled with taking on too much, or not being willing to let that go in some way? I mean, we all have, but what does that look like for
Well,
you?
in more recent years, it was about taking care of my mom,
Hmm.
and nobody could do it good enough,
Right.
you know. But I ended up in the burnout phase. But where it started, where it got the most pronounced, and where I learned about taking on too much burnout was in a
Hmm.
cult. You know,
Oh, talk about that. Share that
yeah.
experience with us.
I mean, they create this sense of urgency, like we've got to do all this stuff for the kingdom of God, and
Hmm.
and it's all hands on deck. And so they buy these dilapidated, or rent these dilapidated buildings, and have us staying up till the wee hours of the morning, cleaning it up, fixing
Oh
it up,
no.
and then we all go to work, and then we meet at church. And it's a strategy in a cult. Keep people too
Oh.
tired to think too much about what may be really going on, first off.
Mm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And I eventually reached a place where I had decided I was putting up some boundaries, and I was going to start telling people no.
Hmm.
Because there's yes men under the man,
Sure. Yeah.
and those are the ones that are approaching you. Carol, can and like, there was one guy, the first couple of times after I decided to enforce my boundaries, Carol, can you? And before he could even get it out, I'd say nope. And
Right.
he'd be like, and then the second time, you know, I said nope, and he just did it with an about face and went on to find the next person. The very next time, it was nope before he could even get it out, and he did the about face, and off we went.
Wow. So, what caused you to kind of get to that point where you're like, no? I mean, burnout. But did something shift in you? Because obviously, at one point, you were maybe not okay with it, but you felt you needed to toe
Oh,
the
I was
line,
all in.
right?
I was all
Yeah.
in. I was all in to be, you know,
Mhm.
part of the labor force, and
Right.
whatever else anybody needed, because I was really in love with the situation, with the people,
Mhm.
and the thing that we were doing. And
Right.
it was, so you do strange things out of love, you know.
Interesting. That's an
Mhm.
interesting angle. Isn't that funny? I'm coming at it from a business standpoint. You're coming at it from love. So,
Mhm.
so then did something happen where you just kind of like one day or one night realized, or was it just
Mhm.
slowly kind of over a period and you're like, mm-mm.
It was probably, a perfect storm of a lot of things that kinda got me there. When I lost my job, I wanted to leave, like, town, not be, I was 2 years in the cult. And so I had, come up with this idea that I was gonna go to ORU. Surely that would be acceptable,
Mhm.
because it's a church situation. And, you know,
Right.
and, so I'm all ready to go tell the pastor what I'd like to do, and, because you have to get permission, you have to get the blessing of the man of God. And, you know,
Right.
and
Right.
as soon as I told him, he goes, "Oh, are you?" Yeah.
Oh no.
Well, and I mean, it was my escape hatch.
Yeah.
I lost my job. I got to do something. Why don't I
Hmm.
do this? I
Hmm.
thought
Hmm.
surely it would make perfect sense, and I'd get the blessing, and I'd get to get out of there.
Right. Right. Right.
And so, yeah, and he started kind of going through all the stuff, like, well, all the stuff, all the reasons why that was ORU, you know. And then he did kind of started turning the conversation around to where, well, you know, maybe you should, and just got to get you a good taste of, you know, what religion is and what religion will do to you. Because in our cult, religion was like the dogmatic stuff, you know.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so, of course, that's kind of working at an angle to where I'm going to decide for myself that I'm
Right.
going to stick this out.
Oh.
Yeah,
Ah,
that's how he'd do it. That was the
right.
strategy. Yeah, and it's,
Oh,
you know, he was very, very stealthy, very clever, very cunning like that.
right, right. What an interesting way to keep you in that burnout mode and keep you
Mhm.
taking on too
Yeah.
much, you know. I think guilt
So
does play a lot
yeah,
into it, you know.
yeah. So fast forward a few years later, you know, because the burnout was starting to set in at that point, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, 2 years doesn't seem like a long time in the whole you know, stratosphere of 10 years in, but 2 years is a long time when it's every week, you know?
Yes. Well, and it can burn you out really fast.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because it kind of goes to that isolation thing, you know,
Mhm.
that, you know, just keeping you in that bubble, whatever that bubble is for you, whether it's religion or work or
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, you know, I mean, anything. Um, so, what are some things you do now to help you to not take on too much? Do you find you're still taking on too much? Or I mean, I think everybody's journey for the rest of their lives is gonna be working through different things. But is there anything you find yourself doing now or to
You know,
help?
unfortunately, life has kind of forced me to.
Uh huh.
I have struggled with my mental health my whole life. But then
Okay.
when I reached, you know, that whole age of menopause thing, it just sent
Mm-hmm.
it just rocket speed trouble.
Right.
And so I haven't come up with any real good strategies other than it was for survival that I
Mm.
learned not to take on too much, you know?
Isn't that interesting? So it was survival to take on too much, and now it's survival to not take on too much.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I never kind of seen it that way, you know? That's an interesting um I don't want to say angle. That's not the right word. An interesting observation. There you go. That's that's a better word. Um, so do you feel guilty? Because, you know, there's a lot of guilt around
Oh,
taking on
yep.
too much. Do you feel guilty when you have to maybe like step back? I know you've cut back needing a meeting from,
Yeah.
you know, every day to Monday through Friday. Is there any, do you still feel that guilt or now are you looking at
No.
it in a different way?
Well, no, I do struggle with guilt. I mean, when I got out of the cult, I spent several years in survivor's guilt, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because I got out and they're still,
Mhm.
you know, they're still in that. They're still being squeezed for everything that they can be squeezed for, you know? And then, you know, I kind of ran into some burnout taking care of my mom. You know, the thing with my
Mhm.
brother
Mhm.
just really did a number on me as far as being a presence in my mom's life. That
Yeah.
dynamic changed drastically.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I did hire people to come and look after her for a few hours out of the day, just so I could have a little bit of a break. But it was still 24/7, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you know, so I had some survivor's guilt with around my mother's death too, because I spent the better part of her last couple of years in burnout, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
and, you know, Steve and I had taken a trip and I had just come back with a fresh attitude. You know, I'm one of those that I have to get out of my day-to-day world. I just have to just
Yeah,
get on the road and blow the cobwebs out of my mind and, you know,
right.
and it doesn't matter if I have someone with me or I don't. It's something I gotta do. But when you're married, you wanna
Yeah,
include your
there is
spouse, and
that whole
especially when
thing.
you know they wanna be included, but,
Right.
they're digging in their heels because they don't wanna take the time and go through the expense and the trouble and all of that.
Yeah.
They're thinking on that lines, and I'm like, "I gotta get out of here."
Right, right. You're like, for my own survival, I have to get out of here.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
so interesting, and
yeah. I dealt with a lot of guilt. I only had 10 days coming back from that road trip before mom was gone, and when
oh,
I came back, I was just like, "Yes, let's do this."
yeah,
And I was
yeah.
starting to get the house all straightened out in the areas where it was messed up. And, so I've dealt with some guilt around that. I still do,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. An interesting kind of flip side to this, and the way that my family, because my dad passed away from colon cancer, and he battled it for 3.5 years, and my brother and I both moved back home to help my mom.
Yeah.
And so I had just, I had just gotten divorced, and that was brutal. And so my oldest daughter and I moved back to my mom's house. My brother moved back. And my mom's got she's got the cutest little house, but it is a little house. It's like 900 square feet. It's like 3 bedrooms,
Oh,
1 bathroom. There's just not enough space for all of
yeah.
the things, but we made it work. One of the
Yeah.
things that, and my mom being a nurse, she understood burnout. She was an oncology nurse. She understood way more about the situation
Oh, yeah.
than, like, we all understood it, but she understood the importance of it more. So
Mhm.
what I love about my mom, one of the things I love about my mom is that she made sure we all got time. So my mom and I would go to work during the day. Like, she had to continue to work so that my dad had the insurance, because she had really great insurance through the hospital. So my dad had like the top care,
Wow.
that he could have in the state. And I was a single mom.
Yeah.
And was not getting child support from my ex, which was totally okay. I wanted it that way, so nobody beg on that. um, but I had to work, and so when we got off work, that was my brother's chance to go out and do his thing, and so he had a chunk of time, and then
Yeah.
he would come back and he would take care of my dad in the evening. So actually, my brother, hold, okay, all right, sorry, I thought I heard something. So my mom made sure that, hey, get out of there. That's not for you. Go on, go lay down, go be somebody. Um, Sorry. So she made sure that we didn't get burnout, that we got opportunities to go do something. And the
That's
rule was,
amazing.
we never really called anybody. Like, when we were at work, nobody, like, that was kind of our time away. And
Okay.
we never bothered my brother when he was out. We had a code. It was 911. So if something really, really serious happened, we would, like, text 911 so we would know.
Mhm.
And it was really interesting too, because we kind of each had our parts. And
Yeah.
so, like, of course, the mom.
Yeah.
My brother was the main caregiver. Well, no, I don't really want to put it that way. My mom helped care for my brother, but my brother was the one that my dad literally leaned on the most. I think because my dad didn't want to put too much stress on my mom and I. So
Yeah.
he leaned on my brother a lot.
Uh,
And I was kind of the spokesperson of the family, like, you know. Um, and so we kind of each had our roles, and we each had our things.
yeah.
And what was interesting was, after my dad passed, because we knew he was going to pass, right? I mean, he wasn't going to come out of this. We knew that.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't until a few years later when I finally grieved, because it took me a long time to grieve my dad, like, because I had gone into this mode of, I wouldn't even say caregiver mode. I would say I went into this mode of what's facing us and how do
Mhm.
we get through it and
Mhm.
what's coming next. So I
Mhm.
wasn't like the mothering, nurture, babying type person. That's just kind of
Yeah.
not who I am. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, here's this. How do we face it? How do we get through it? Okay, this needs to be handled. What do we do? My
Yeah.
brother and I really ended up in the end realizing that it was going to be a lot more difficult for my mom.
Yeah.
And so we ended up taking on a little bit more responsibility. But that was our own choice. It wasn't brought to us. We just kind of between the two of us realized that,
Yeah.
hey, we have to take this on at this point.
Yeah.
And so it was cool. So I want to share that story, not because like my story is better than your story, but to give hope that there is, there is healthy ways to manage it. And the
Yeah.
great thing is having someone, I think had my mom not been a um, an oncology nurse, I really don't know that we would have handled it that way as a family. I think it would have
Wow.
been very different. And,
Mhm.
my dad and I are super close. Like, I couldn't give my dad medicine. So, I just didn't do it. I was not responsible for my dad's medications because I didn't want to be, but I didn't have to be. And
Yeah.
so, I want to share that by knowing what taking on too much and burnout looks like, there are people out there who have managed that in a
Yeah.
healthy way. And
Yeah.
that, again, where delegating
You
things,
do.
leaning on people
Yeah.
has really um, helped,
Yeah.
and I
Mhm.
think that's the most important thing because had my mom not so I mean, she didn't set us down and be like, okay, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. It's just sort of the way it organically flowed.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
that makes it really nice too when something just organically flows.
Yeah.
But had we not done that, like, I can't imagine my mom's mental health, my mental health. Oh my God,
Yeah.
my mental health would have been destroyed. Like
Yeah.
everything I was going through at the time, there's no way. And my
Right.
my brothers, and we all had
Yeah.
our own mental health struggles. They looked very different,
Mhm.
but we were able to manage,
Yeah.
and even through my dad going through that, I was getting off medications, I was going to therapy, I was still doing the things, I was working, I was being a mom. So,
Mhm.
I do think that there's a good way to manage things. And I think it's important to know that it's out there. I
Yeah.
think sometimes we think there's no answer, you
Yeah, and
know?
we think there's nobody too because, why would
Yeah.
anybody care about
Yeah.
me and this person in this situation? Why should anybody care? But people,
Right.
you get out there enough, you learn people really do care. There are
They
people who
do.
honestly care, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And that's
Right.
part of it too. That's part of not taking on too much is just realizing, there's somebody there that will fall in love with my mom and will care, because
Right.
there was a lot to love there.
Right.
And,
Right.
and I kinda was seeing that with the people that would see about her. Everybody liked my
Right.
mom, at the nursing service.
Uh-huh. I seen the tail end of somebody's quote. It said, "That's what we did with my mom. Everybody helped in or helped
Yeah.
out, but we knew our limitations." I think that's important too, to be
Yeah.
realistic with yourself. Sometimes that is the hardest thing. Oh, blush to crochet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to know your limitations.
Mhm.
And I think too, sometimes we can come from a place of I can do it all on my own, and sometimes that's ego talking, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, I can do
Yeah.
it all. I don't need any help. I'm la 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 la. And then sometimes that comes from fear,
Yeah.
of I have
Yeah.
to do it all.
Yeah.
And and I think knowing our limitations and boundaries, setting boundaries is so
Mhm.
important. Carol, talk to me about share with me different boundaries around this you've had to set. Was that easy for you? Was that hard for you? Did you just get to a point where you're like, nah?
Yeah, no, I got to the because I really loved the Lord, and,
Uh-huh.
and I really wanted to serve the Lord in earnest. But
Right.
when you're you have this love thing that has been at work in the past, but now all of a sudden you're in burnout, you
Hmm.
know, it almost felt like the worst kind of burnout that you could possibly have, because it's your spiritual life,
Yes. Yeah, you
you
should be
know?
going there for respite and comfort, not
Hmm.
burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. And so just over time, just this would happen here and this would happen there, to where, I began to realize, why do I don't owe these people anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
If I'm doing it as unto the Lord, I don't owe these people anything. So
Right.
let's, I don't know. That's just kind of where I got to, and, you get somebody in leadership that says something to you that just cuts real deep.
Yeah.
That'll help
Yeah.
you along. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and there's and I see. I'm not sure what this is, but one word caught my attention. And hold on, guys. I'm sorry. Hold on. Hey, don't be shitty. Get around it. Act like somebody. Lay down and behave. I'm sorry. My animals just decided that like I said, I gave them calming treats. I gave them chew toys. They were fine. I was in there gluing on my eyelashes, y'all. They're just chilling, like nothing's going on. And then they're like, oh. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. But the word that I seen, right? But mom, I know. And the word that I seen that made me think of something was anxiety. And that has a lot to do. And Carol, if you see something that you want to address, bring
Oh,
it up.
that's that comment that life's good, just that's gold right there. That's so
The
true.
the representations of abuse are so insidious.
Repercussions.
Oh,
Yeah, the
repercussions.
repercussions of abuse are so insidious. Never see it coming until it's already causing damage. That's the truth. That's the truth. And if you're not the kind of person who's willing to, set your own boundaries of your own, while you're still healthy, life has a way of helping you out, and not in
Right,
great ways.
right. Um, and it's really for me. The funny thing about boundaries for me is that I didn't have any um, in the beginning. Growing up, I didn't really need them because my parents like put those boundaries in place for me. I
Yeah.
had rules, and I didn't like them, and I pushed against them. But I knew what happened when I did. And
Yeah.
so it's not that I didn't know how to do them or anything like that. I just, they were in place for me. And I think one important thing is that I went from my parents' house to my ex-husband's house to then the first time I was on my own was when I was in my late 30s. I'd never
Wow.
lived on my own. I'd never
Wow.
been on my own. I'd never paid my own bill. I'd never
Mhm.
had to make that income, right? All on my own.
Yeah.
And so I had no boundaries because I kind of was in this, like, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to kind of explain. I was in this like good little wife mode. Now, I do think it is important if you're married to take care of your spouse and be loving and gracious and supportive of them. And however that looks for you is fine. If you really groove on that 1950 wife thing, great.
Yeah.
If you're like a completely independent wife, you do your own thing, that's amazing too. Like whatever that looks like for you. But I was
Yeah.
in that unhealthy independent wife mode. And
Okay.
I was just doing everything. And
Okay.
like to the point that I couldn't even function or think. And then
Yeah.
when everything finally ended, I still had no boundaries. So even though I had said, you know what, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be married to you anymore. And that was fully my choice. I chose how that went. And
Mhm.
I chose how that went because the one thing I didn't want was to have anything that could be held over me. So when
Yeah.
I walked out with as little as I walked in with. I
Mhm.
I didn't walk out with anything because I
Yeah.
didn't want anyone to ever say you have what you have because I gave it to you.
Mm.
No, I
Yeah.
was getting it on
Yeah.
my own. Like
Yeah.
come hell or high water, I was
Yeah.
getting it.
Yeah.
And and earning it, not just but earning it. But I still got walked on, even though we
Mhm.
were divorced, even though I was in my own house, even though I was
Yeah.
still getting stomped all over.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it really took a lot for me to set boundaries. And then now I think my boundaries are such that when people come, when I have friends and they're like, did you? I'm like, I didn't know that. How did I not know that? Oh my God. And I think it's just kind of now like this vibe that I put off that's like, and I don't mean it to be, but they're just so ingrained now because I do think it is a little bit of a trauma response of like, no, you're not going to get that close to me that fast. Like, I'll be
Yeah.
nice to you and I'll chat with you, but mm-mm. And the thing is, I can see some people coming a mile away. And I'm just like, yeah, no. And so, and that did come from trauma because I wasn't always that way. And
Yeah.
it became more of a, we talk about angry habit, cheese chucker Christy, right? Well, this was like beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah.
this was beyond throwing cheese.
Rabbit
And
hobbit gone wild.
yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, like, you guys have not seen me really, really angry yet. And I think here's the funny thing, because I'm so tiny, I think if you've seen me really angry, like, first of all, you would be like, where did that come from? Because I didn't know she had that in her. And the second thing would be like, isn't she so cute? It would be like Tinkerbell, like, da, 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 and you're just like, oh, aren't you precious? Look at you. But I still get really mad.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a survive. Like I didn't sit down and think to myself, "This
Yeah.
is my boundary. This is my boundary." It just kind of
Right.
became like, "This feels icky,
Mhm.
and you're not doing that to me," or "You did this to me before. This is
Yeah.
why we got here, so you don't get to do it again." But the
Yeah.
other side of that was when people put boundaries on me. Because I didn't always respect boundaries either. Like with my ex, I would be like, what, blah, 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 and that was hard too. Like when my therapist was like, you're not respecting boundaries either, because
Yeah.
there's a little bit when you've been together that long. You kind of have a hard time. So not only did I not sit down and consciously say these are my boundaries, but I also unconsciously was not respecting his. So I had no real idea of
Yeah.
what that even looked like. And the
Right.
thing was, I didn't even like him. Like, I wasn't still married to him.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
was like, you're not, it was almost like I had the power, kind of like Shira, I have the power, and I was going
Yeah.
to wield that sword
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
could.
I mean, the first time you realize that you have a right to your boundaries and you go there, even if it's, I mean, the first time I ever enforced my boundaries was, after rehab.
Uh-huh.
And it was so scary, but it was so empowering,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And then you kind of get addicted to it and you're like, no, 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 no. That's
Yeah.
what I did, and then
Me
everybody
too.
was like,
I
whoa,
same.
chick,
Yeah.
rein it in. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just tell everybody no. And isn't that funny that we don't actually sit down and think to ourselves, this is my boundary? Like, did you ever do that? Like, I
No,
never did that.
no.
Has,
I mean,
has
I
anybody in
grew
the chat ever done that?
I mean, I grew up not having, not getting to have boundaries because my brother was,
Yeah,
my abuser, my
right.
punisher,
Yeah.
he'd punish with words and fists, you know,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
making me watch him abuse animals and just, you know.
Yeah,
So, how do you learn boundaries in that situation? You
right.
can't. when you're a little
Yeah.
kid and you're dependent upon these people for survival, you
Mm-hmm.
know? I just
Mm-hmm.
thought everybody was on board with it and that he was just allowed to. I didn't know that my mom didn't know that he'd been doing that until he beat me up in 2018 right there in front of her. I
Uh-huh.
never told her. He had it himself,
Right.
and
And I want to talk about that because that's really important too. As children, children fill in what they think. And most of the time, it's not accurate, it's not correct, right?
right.
We're just going with like the kids. And I think that's
You
why
have
it's
very
important.
poor reasoning skills, you
Yes.
know? Yeah,
And I think that's why it's so important as parents to share things. I know that when my ex and I divorced, we set the kids down and we told them.
yeah,
But the one thing we made sure to tell them is this is not your fault. You didn't do anything here.
yeah,
You're not bad children. You are here because you were conceived and brought into this world out of love. We love you. And the
yeah.
other thing, and that was my ex's, was like, it's really important that they know this isn't their fault. And mine was like, Taylor Swift, we are never, ever, ever getting back together. Like, I never wanted them to have a shred of hope that
Yeah.
was going to happen, because I knew that their dad would go on and probably date people. And I knew that, I would probably go on and date people. But kids do that. And isn't it interesting that this whole time you thought everybody was so on board, and they really weren't, and they genuinely didn't know. And I think that's encouraging to anybody out there who's listening. When you're looking back at your childhood, are you looking at what is the truth, or are you looking at what you believe to be the truth? And
Yeah.
and that can be two different things, and that can be the same thing. And sometimes in healing ourselves and being able to go forward, we have to know the truth.
Yeah.
We can't just go on these perceptions, because they're not always right.
Right.
It's not always right. And then how did that make you feel when you
Oh,
found out that your mom didn't know? Like, you'd gone your whole
I
life
was
thinking she did.
I was gobsmacked. I was just like, "What?"
Mm.
And when it's happening to you and you're a little kid, it's
Yeah.
so loud within
Right.
you that how
Mm-hmm.
does the rest of the world not hear it?
Right.
How would they not have known? Because it was very loud within me, you
Right.
know?
Right. Right. Right.
But
And that's
they were
such a
yeah.
and I love what you just said there. It was so loud inside me. How did
Mhm,
anybody else not know?
mhm.
And I think that is a really important thing. And I think if there's anyone out there who's working on boundaries, or a healing journey, or overcoming trauma, I think what Carol just said is really important. And write that down in your journal. And I want you to think on that. Journal on that, meditate on that, pray on that, light a candle around it, dance around a tree around it, whatever you do. I'm not making fun of anything. I've done all of them. So, but really take some time to think on that, because that's
Mhm.
profound. That's really profound. And I think that's really validating for people. Like, it is
Yeah,
loud in you.
yeah.
Um, let's see. Carol, can you read that? My screen
Yes,
is
I
so small.
can. And I was hoping to get Life's Good's comment back. I have always had to set boundaries with everyone I've ever met to keep myself safe. Yeah, because nobody's gonna do it for you. It's
Right.
very important to be very picky about who you let in and trust. It's so important. It's hard now, but not impossible.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fine line there. That you've got to have your boundaries down enough that you're approachable.
Mhm.
Um, in my case, that you don't have RBF. My husband jokes around with me. I don't know if y'all have ever seen Jeff Dunham, but Walter, that cranky, the Jeff Dunham is the guy with the puppets. He's the ventriloquist. and
Oh,
he's
okay.
got so if you haven't seen it, like Seja, I don't know, can you Google that and like put it up on the screen? Puppet Walter, he's like this crotchety old man. He's got this
Oh, I
face
think
that's
I know
like,
exactly who you're talking about.
you know,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
looks
yeah,
like this.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And my husband, when I get really cranky, he'll be like, "Okay, Walter," and then I'm like, "Oh man," but you have to kind of not be that,
Yeah,
right? Because you've got to be
yeah,
approachable, but you also
yeah.
can't be the doormat either. And so,
Right.
I think that's where, I think, and what I love is, the boat is such a great place for people to meet and connect and share their stories of overcoming their addictions, their compulsive behaviors, to know that they're
Yeah,
not alone. But then
yeah.
there's the next step beyond that, and I think that's where Spanx, Captain Calhoun, excuse me, however you want to refer to him, I think that's what he's bringing into us. Is that okay? You've hold on, it said show on stream. Yes, that's it. That's it right there. That's how I look sometimes. I love it. I don't know how to get it off screen. There we go. My face is really animated. It hides nothing. It hides nothing. Even if I had a mask on, you can still see because I'd be like, yeah. um, but it's now I lost my train of thought. Mm-hmm.
We were talking
What was
about
I talking about?
Walter somehow, and then we were talking about the boat, Spanx, Captain
Oh
Spanx,
yes,
and
yes, 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 yes.
yeah,
So the next part of that is, once I feel, for me personally, I can't speak for everybody, is that okay, you've realized it, you're navigating it, whatever it is, or past it, however that looks. And then there's that deeper connection that goes beyond the trauma,
yeah,
right? It goes beyond that, because if you only connect around your trauma, that's trauma bonding.
trauma
And
bonding.
that's
Mhm.
not healthy either. And
Ooh,
so letting your walls down, letting people in, letting people get to know you is a really good way to have healthy connection, because
yeah,
we want to encourage healthy connection, right? Not
yeah,
unhealthy connection. Because
yeah.
unhealthy connection is when you're both the victims and you're both like, you know, in
And you
Southern
feed each
terms,
other
wallowing
victim.
around in it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you don't want to wallow around in it. And so
No,
I think that's and that's important to me, is
hmm,
that you get to know people beyond that, because there's a person beyond that, right?
yeah,
And that person might be really cool.
yeah,
They could
yeah,
have they could have a great sense of humor, or they could be so smart, or
yeah,
they could be any number of things, or they could be like Ben and be like 12 feet tall with hands as big as whatever, like Tommy says, but like you wouldn't know that just looking on screen.
no, you
You
really
wouldn't
wouldn't.
know
Yeah,
that
yeah,
Ben is a huge guy with these big hands. But that's what I love about getting to know people. And
yeah,
so I think navigating boundaries, it is tricky, but
hmm,
you've got to do it in a healthy way as well.
yeah,
And you've got to be able to let people in. And
mhm.
it's a lot,
It
you
is.
know. It's
But
it's
it's but
really
like
a lot.
Life's Good said, it's not impossible,
Right. And
you
I
know?
think that's the important thing too. To see people who have done it in a healthy way.
Mhm.
Um, what
Yeah,
does that look like? You know?
yeah. The
Um,
2 examples, there are great examples, you know?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For some reason, Dr. Romani comes to mind.
She is beautiful,
Yeah.
and I know people either love him or hate him, but two
Oh,
people that I
her.
listen to.
No, her. Dr.
Oh, no, but
Romani.
what I'm going to
Oh,
Right,
okay.
right.
Oh,
But
sorry.
what I was
I
going to say,
apologize.
no, that's okay. And who I'm about to mention, I know people either love him or hate him, but I really like Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, and I
Mhm.
really love Simon Sinek. And the reason I like Dr. Peterson is because he brings a side that you might not think about. Like, you don't
Yeah,
necessarily have to
that's true.
agree,
That's
but
right.
how,
That is true.
but he
Mhm.
does bring things to the table that make you think. And I'm all
That's true.
about thinking,
Yeah.
like, and posing a question, like throwing up something and be like, what do you guys think about this? Like, not even say what I think, but just like, what do you all think about this? What does this mean to you? And Simon Sinek, he's somebody who, if you guys have not checked him out yet, he's got a podcast called A Bit of Optimism, and I love it. He is somebody who talks a lot about people, and but also in a business setting, and how to grow people in business. But a lot of what he says applies so much to life, and his Bit of Optimism podcast is really amazing, and I encourage you guys to check it out because he's got stories that are just great. And I want to encourage you too that, you know, just because you might not necessarily agree with everything somebody says, maybe give them a listen, because maybe they'll give you something to think about,
It doesn't mean they don't come with something to offer. That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Exactly.
Mhm.
What is this Life's Good saying? I was facilitating a group that was what? I was
I was
facilitating a group that,
facilitating a group that needed to practice scenarios of trust and recognizing those you can't trust. Okay.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And
It takes
that,
practice. It really does. And that can be a painful process.
well, and going back to Dr. Romney, if people haven't watched her, go check out her content. She is amazing. But one of the things, and I will tell you this, one of the things that I notice first is when people start love bombing me. If I feel
Yeah.
like somebody is love bombing me, I'm going to step back and I'm going to be
Yeah.
like, what's going on here? And that's
Mhm.
one of my boundaries, because
Yeah.
that's what my ex did to me to draw me in.
Yeah.
And then all of the other stuff started. And then I would get to where I would want to leave. And then I would get love bombed again.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so for me, love bombing is kind of a PTSD response. And I do act a lot like Shitty Kitty sometimes. When people are like, oh, you're so great, you're so wonderful. I'm like, what? Hold on. What are you doing? What are your intentions? And so I'm realizing I'm probably have a lot more in common with Shitty Kitty than I really care to admit. But I think that's important. And, depending on your situation and where you've come from, your boundaries, mine is love bombing. So like I said,
Yeah.
if you're coming at me with a lot of compliments, or I feel like you're love bombing me or my friends, I'm really stepping back and I'm like, I'm watching.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and I'm not always right. Okay. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
people are just genuinely, truly amazing. Cynthia, she's
Yeah.
been on my channel a couple times. She is the
Mhm.
kindest, sweetest, most gracious, grateful person. But when you first meet her, at first you're kind of like, what's going on here? And then you get to know her, and then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this is you. This is who you
Yeah.
are. We're
That's right.
golden.
Yeah.
But that for me is a big thing, that
Yeah.
I'm like, mm, you
Yeah.
know, and life's good. Yeah, neurodivergence. But I don't want to call that love bombing, because to me, love bombing has to do with a narcissist and their way to draw you in maliciously. It's malicious. I don't think neurodivergents are malicious in what they do. I think they are trying to connect with you in, and I think that they're genuinely authentic in it. And I
Yeah.
think that they
But
just have a lot of love and positivity that radiates.
can look a little different and can be a little off-putting at first, but
Mhm.
yeah, you eventually, you do learn to decipher
Yeah.
love bombing
And
from someone who's actually just excited to be here.
yes. and that's where me stepping back, that's part of, one of my protective things is like, I'm going to watch you, because you can tell the difference between love bombing and between just genuinely being passionate. And I, so like I said, for me only, love bombing is malicious. Like, if you're love bombing me, you're not going to get past that stage. Right?
Yeah.
Because I know what's beyond that. But I will give you the opportunity. I will give you the benefit of the doubt. Like I said, my friend Cynthia, she is amazing. She's so wonderful. Go back and check out those interviews with her. If you have not seen them, she is great. And she is just very gracious, and it is who she is. And I think, and again, recognizing people who are neurodivergent. And again, I think life's good. It's not on you to recognize the difference. You just behave how you are, how you are. It's up to the other people to determine how that fits for them. And I don't want anybody to feel like, you have to justify your behavior. If you're just excited and passionate for people, be excited and passionate for people. And you know what? Some people are going to be great with it. Some people aren't. But it's not up to you. Don't take that on yourself. Again, don't take that on, because that's not on you to decide. Like, give yourself that grace. And but I'm also the type of person, if you come up and try to hug me, I'm going to back away. But I get to know you, and I know you for a little while, and then I'm probably going to let you hug. Now it'll probably be like a side hug, or like, okay, we're good. But
sometimes I'm like that too. I'm like, oh, we're hugging now. Oh.
I know. I'm like, that's why I say I think I'm like Shitty Kitty. Michael picks her up and she's like, what? And I'm the same way. I'm like, I don't want to be. And it's just not who I am. But I want to, like I said, I don't want to seem like disrespectful or unkind in that. But give yourself some grace. If it's who you are, it's who you are, and it's a beautiful part of who you are.
It is beautiful, and we need more of that.
Right. And don't consider it love bombing, because people who are coming out of, the reason I don't like that word, people who are coming out of really narcissistic, abusive relationships, or people who listen to Dr. Ramani a lot, might be like, oh no. So it's just your positivity and abundance overflowing. Yeah, absolutely. Pop on. So, and I'm sure she's probably going to talk about neurodivergence, because I don't, to be honest, I don't have a lot to offer around that.
And just so y'all know, I cannot see the comments rolling. They've been stuck since we first got on. In one place, I've been trying to scroll. They won't scroll, so I can't see. Hey, there's Tara. Hello.
We got Tara too.
I'm so glad you're here. Okay, I'm going to make my screen bigger. I'm not going to be able to see any comments at all, so I'm going to rely on y'all to clue me in. Tara, how are you? What is going on?
Pretty darn good. I got some really good news late last night.
Yes?
It's about the job, the part-time job that I applied for. Just something to keep me busy, something to pay my bills. I got it. Yeah. I got an official offer. I got it. Yeah.
I was really expecting that, but it's very awesome to hear that.
Yeah, I was pretty hopeful about it, just because I've been working with this agency as a volunteer for over a year now, and it felt pretty in the bag. They were talking about training schedules with me, and it was very it was a formality, the fact that they had to interview me. But yeah, I got the official offer and the wage they're going to pay me, and I'm happy with all of it. So I officially accepted the offer right before this.
That's great.
Yeah. Nice. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate that. And Ben says, that's such good news, Tara. Yep. Hey, Ben. And hey, everyone in the chat. It is fantastic news.
Yes. And I'm sorry, Tara. I hope you weren't waiting long. I was trying to.
No. I thought I popped on right at 11, and I thought maybe things were getting wrapped up, and you were looking for a good segue to move over. I haven't been waiting long at all.
No,
Okay, good. Okay, good.
So, Tara, part of the reason that I wanted to have you on, other than just being absolutely wonderful and lovely and a friend of the channel, you are a peer support specialist, and you help people kind of navigate this. So I was wondering what you could share with us from a more professional standpoint, because we've just been kind of sharing our experiences, as to taking on too much, what that looks like, what that can cause, boundaries. Like, what you got for us?
Yeah, well, y'all would make great peer support specialists, first of all, because that's what we do. We just share our experience. We're not trained to give advice or really to provide guidance. We're really just here to help people sort through their own thoughts, make a plan for themselves, and to share our own lived experiences is the best that we can do. That's support. So for me, I think in terms of taking on too much, it really helps to know what my capacity is, what I can do and what I cannot do. I think asking for help, I was listening to y'all talk earlier, like when it was just you and Carol, like, between the 10 and 11 my time hour. And y'all were talking about asking for help. And that one has been a very difficult one for me to learn personally, but it's really valuable. It's been an essential part of my recovery. Yes. And if I hadn't learned that skill, because it was something I had to learn in recovery, asking for help. And then accepting it, right? Because there's it's one thing to ask for it, and it's a different thing to actually accept it and to receive that. It is. So I think asking for help would be a really huge way that I prevent burnout in my own life. Something we learn in peer support specialist training too is the biggest causes of burnout. There's two reasons that we learn. Number one is lack of self-care. And I've noticed in the past few months, I have let my exercise routine seriously slip. And that's a really important part of my self-care. Having fun, taking time to do things that bring me joy. Those are really important. Not only to preventing burnout, but to my recovery and to my life. So I think making time for self-care, whatever that looks like for the individual, whatever. And for me, it could change. Like my self-care today has been going to the dentist. I had another dentist appointment today, and it was a good one. It was actually a good one. Showering, blow drying my hair. I know it sounds silly, but I was debating, should I just not wash my hair and wear pigtails, or should I do it? And I was like, I'm going to take the time and actually pour into myself a little bit, make myself feel a little bit shiny. So the self-care piece, and I did some yoga yesterday for the first time in a while. I'm happy to say, and it felt really, it felt really nice. So that's number one, that we learn. One of the biggest causes of burnout in peer support is lack of self-care. Number two, maybe y'all have heard me talk about this before, but number two is trying to fix people.
Oh.
And so and Carol, I'm sure everybody in this conversation right now has tried or wanted to fix somebody before, but that's a skill too that I'm learning and have to remind myself it's not my responsibility. I can be there to provide support, but it's not my responsibility to fix people. It's not my responsibility to make sure people stay clean and sober.
And that's a tough one.
It is tough. It is tough. It helps me though to keep less on my plate, because if I'm taking on all the problems of the entire world, then that puts a heck of a lot of pressure on me.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think asking for help, taking care of myself, and not trying to fix people. Those would be the top 3 things. Of course, saying no, that
Right.
I think that that's a really critical.
No is such a powerful and important word to learn how to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This is something that I'm actually doing less of at this point, because I've been such in a sort of fight or flight survival mode the past few years, trying to get back on my feet, trying to keep myself safe. And now it's like I'm wanting to I'm properly medicated these days. I'm not self-medicating anymore. I'm working with my mental health and physical health care, medical health care professionals. I'm on the right mix of mental health meds. And so I'm naturally wanting to add more things into my life, onto my plate. And I'm finding that I'm in a mode of like, yeah, I'll do that. Sure, I'll do that. Yep, I'll do that. I'll do it all. But with the caveat that eventually I'm going to hit my max and I'm going to have to start saying no again. But I'm in this mode where I'm like, sure, yep, I'm right there with you.
Right. Well, and oh, hold on. Oh, son of a gun. Just a minute.
What are you doing, Christy?
I don't know. I was trying to read the comments. Like,
the comment said it was from Kristen Melinda, and it said some good advice I got was no is a complete sentence.
Yeah,
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, I love it too.
I'm going to go back to full screen mode, and you're just going to have to read me the comments because this is not.
It's like a game of hot potato, or like, what's the game where you go around in the chairs and like the music?
Oh, yeah, musical chairs. Yes, I know. And it's really just because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't even know how I did that. I just like touched the screen, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my.
Well, I think
Here we are.
You're doing pretty good for not knowing what you're doing, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I do know how to talk, and that's about it.
Good at that.
You know, I want to go back, Tara, to you saying trying to fix people. I think that's a lot. So I can only speak from a woman's standpoint because I am one. I think I've tried to do that a lot. I've really tried. And it is so hard to stop doing that, especially I think for me, I can see people's potential and I want them to be that. I think there's a little bit of that mother in me because I've got 3 biological children, but we've got 8 kids together. So like combined blended family, that's a lot of kids. That's a lot of mommy. You know what I mean? That's a lot of don't do this, don't, that's a lot of advice, a lot of, and it is hard. Do you have any thing that has worked for you to try not to fix people, or any advice that you've been given or anything you've seen to help not do that?
Yeah, I think a technique that we learn in peer support is asking open-ended questions. Questions that begin with how and what are really good ways to frame a question that's open. This puts the ball back in their court so that we're not trying to. And if I can add, it's a very difficult thing for me. It's a muscle that I'm building for myself. To not try to guide somebody to the thing that I think will work for them.
Right.
That's a skill. That's a skill.
It is. That's been a big one in my life.
Yeah, because I mean, I know what's worked for me, and I can share my experience. But the goal of me sharing my experience isn't to convince somebody that that's going to be the best path for them. It's just a way to relate, so that they know they're not alone. They know that I'm listening and here with them. But to ask open-ended questions, to draw out what the person thinks is the best solution for them, so that it came from within them, is the most empowering thing that we can do for another person.
That's so true.
And I think it does. I like how you said it's empowering empowering to have them find the solution within themselves, because they can look back and realize, I did this. Not Tara told me, but I found it within myself. And I think a lot of important things are, like, you have it in you. You just have to find it. And then, like you said, you have to exercise that muscle, and you have to trust yourself. I think that's a big one. Trust yourself to know that you're not going to screw it up. Like, I mean, okay, yeah, maybe you screwed it up before. I did. But that doesn't mean I'm going to screw it up every time from here on out, for now until eternity,
And Ben says that, yes, it will also tend to stick better as well.
True.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A person is way more prone to following through with something that was their idea than
Yeah.
something that somebody said, you should think about this. It's like, don't tell me what I should do,
Yeah, I'm bad about that. I want you to think and meditate on this. I say that all the time. Again, that mothering, and it is hard, because, even if you're coming from a place of love, somebody might not perceive it as that, because, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, right? And people are going to be like, that's okay.
In terms of not fixing people, this is where the sharing lived experience comes into play. And I also have had to learn to do this too, because I don't want to be perceived as someone who just talks about themselves all the time. But when I share what I've gone through and what my perspective is on the experience that I had, I'm not telling anybody to do anything. I'm just saying what has worked for me. And that's the only perspective that we really have anyways, is our own, based on our own lived experiences.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do think it's important to share our experiences, because that's how you know you're not alone, and maybe in sharing your story, and you were talking about this last night on your channel, somebody else might find a solution for themselves, or they might take a bit of what you say and make it their own. And I think it's beautiful. And I think it really is so important to share that,
Yeah. And that kind of goes along the line with Life's Good comment here. It says the most important thing is to trust yourself. Ask others' opinions first if you need it, but still do what you need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Take what resonates. Absolutely. Yeah. So Tara, is there anything that you want to share where you have had to like step back from taking on too much, or like share a story with us so we can get to know you a little better, if you would, about something like that, or a situation that has come up?
Well, I can tell you that when I'm still an engineer, right? I'll always be an engineer. But when I was actually working in the medical device industry as an engineer, I did not understand as an entry level, I just graduated, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I did not understand how to say no to my boss. And I did not understand how to delegate to other people and ask for help, essentially, like those very important skills that we were just talking about. And I painted myself into this corner, and my boss had, she had very narcissistic tendencies, we'll just say. And I hadn't gone through the therapy process to know, or done any research. I didn't know anything about people like that, or how to protect myself. And I just let her do a number on me. And I actually ended up having to leave. It was like my dream job. I was working in research and development, and I actually ended up having to leave that team to go to a different team as a quality engineer, working for a great boss who we stay in touch today. And he continues to want me to come back and work for him. And I did really well in quality as an engineer working for him. I think had he been in the other department, I would have done a really good job working for him as my manager, as my supervisor. But I kick myself looking back, because if I knew now what I knew then, I would have never let her, first of all, talk to me the way that she did. Second of all, put so much stuff on my plate. I would have expressed boundaries and said, you know, I'm handling way too much. Like, I can't actually get to that. Or even something like, I can't get to that now. I'll get to it next week. You know, something like that. I didn't even have the repertoire to be able to say something like that at that point.
Yeah.
So all that being said, today, I would say I'm not necessarily doing too much, because I've been in a very sort of hiatus mode. I totally disconnected from social media, and I'm slowly starting to build momentum, having been out of the game for about 3 years. And so I'm trying to put as much on my plate as I can handle, while being aware that, you know, if I put too much on there, then things are going to start to slip, and I don't want to allow that to happen. But I think that my past experience of taking on too much and then not being able to communicate it, or I think at that point in my career, I think I really didn't even know that I had too much on my plate. I just thought that pulling 50 and 60-hour weeks was the way, you know, taking my laptop home on the weekend and working over the weekends. Like, I thought that was the life. But it doesn't have to be that way. We have to manage up and tell people what it is that we need and ask for help when we need it. And I'm learning from y'all. Y'all are working with Stasia. I told Christy, Stasia, I was like, how do I get someone like that to help me out? You know, because you're just doing a rocking job helping them out.
She is.
Thank you.
And I heard y'all talking about, and you're welcome, you deserve it. I heard y'all talking about not asking for help, and how, Christy, you were talking earlier about how it could come from the ego. And I'm like, that kind of, I was getting dressed and getting ready. I was like, that kind of made me think pretty hard, because I've been wanting to learn to do everything myself and be a one-woman show so that I'm proficient in everything, so that when I do bring someone on, I can manage them in a way that I feel is efficient. But I think the truth is that there is some ego in that, and I don't have to understand everything. You know, at some point, I'm going to have to ask for help if I want to continue to grow. So thank you for modeling.
Oh, wait. You're welcome. I mean, you know, the way I look at it is, if you grow together, then you all have a shared vision and you're empowered, right? And you can go off and you can know this is her vision, you know. And Stasia and I have had these conversations. Like, Stasia's brought up things and she was like, what about this or what about that? And I'm kind of like, not the direction that I want to go, but I don't want to go this direction because of this. And I think that's important, because when you can share that vision, then you've got somebody who's competent in something that you're not, because I'm not competent in technology. What it does is it makes you look better. Like, you both look good. And if you're doing what you're good at, and this other person's doing what they're good at, together you're going to look fabulous, right? You're going to make each other look good. And I think it's interesting, because I think a lot of people's first experiences with burnout really is work. I mean, I think it's and taking on too much, and even, you know, levels of narcissism and ego. It really comes from work. Go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt your thought at all, but a thought just came into my mind based on the question that you had previously asked. Remember, I told you that there was that boss that I really enjoyed working for and that I excelled working for. I remember shortly after transferring to him, I was still very much coming out of that sort of like abused small mode. And I had a lot on my plate pretty immediately. But I started delegating my work to interns, And I was nervous about my boss finding out that I was doing that. And so it was kind of like low key for a few months, like, but you know, people could see them coming to my desk and needing guidance and stuff like that. And so I'll never forget when he called me into his office. I thought I was in so much trouble because a couple interns had just left my desk. But I walked into his office and he goes, sit down. And I sat, and he's like, have you been delegating your work to the interns? And I said, yes. And he goes, good job. And he was so proud of me. And he continued to give me more, and I continued to mentor and delegate my work to them. And then I became sort of a manager of the interns, so much so that interns from other teams, if their boss, which I can't even imagine a world where I wouldn't have work to give to an intern, but other interns from other teams started coming to me if they didn't have anything to do. And I just had this little team working for me. And so that there's a few things that come into my, it's like, okay, asking for help, like trusting that people can help me really made a difference in my career and could play into why we continue to have a I don't want to call it a friendship, but like he'll reach out and check up on me and see if I want to come work for him from time to time. And then also like the ability to delegate, you know, that's a skill, and just to be able to take work and say, all right, this is what I need help with. If you run into any problems, I'm here for you. So that story just came into mind with respect to taking on too much and how to get out of that.
And I think it's a beautiful story because what you did was you gave people confidence in themselves, confidence in their ability to do their job, confidence in you know, just them as a person, as a whole. And I think that's a big thing when you go to somebody and you're like, look, I trust you with this. And, you know, that's how we become a better society and better people, right? Is when people feel empowered and trusted. And, you know, is everything always going to be right? No. But you know what? When you give everybody their potential to have their own little kingdom, that makes them feel empowered, and then and they know, you know, I can do this, and it builds their confidence. And I think it's one of the most beautiful gifts that we can give people is, look, you've got this. I trust you to do this. And I think too, when you're trusting somebody with something that's important to you, it becomes important to them, and they don't want to let you down as much as you don't want to be, you know, you don't want to fall, and they work more diligently on it, especially if they're excited about it. And that's anything, but that's how we grow people. Like, I think, and it's one of the most beautiful ways. And I think, you know, they probably share stories about you, Tara. And they probably, as they're sitting at their desk managing their own team, they're probably like, you know what? Thank you for Tara for having faith in me and confidence in me to do this. You know, like, I think it's
nice thought.
I mean, it's true though, because that's what you did. You know, that's what you did. And I think it's you know, and we all have ego, and it's really hard to get past it sometimes. You know, it's really hard to admit. Yeah, I remember my mom asking me social media questions, you know, years ago, and I'm like, how do you not know this? And now I'm like, huh? What? What? I don't understand. Like, just tell me what I need to do, don't do. Tell me what I can say. Like, I'm really good at taking direction. So that's good. Stasia, do you have any, I mean, you've got a lot of stuff, but what's something that you've learned about taking on too much, or how not to do it, or what?
Well, I'm gonna admit fully, this is the first time in my life that I've had as much on my plate as I do, and I'm not burnt out. So this is definitely the first time, and it kind of goes along with what you had just said, Christy, to Tara, is having an opportunity and a place to be trusted, to be able to say, I need help, but I'm excited to do this. Like being able to have a little bit of a passion project right now is helping me, because it's helping me place boundaries, and it's helping me figure out when to say no, and how to say no. Because these are all things that I didn't know I needed up until the age of 37.
Right.
Wow.
So it's a learning curve for me right now. It's that time that I'm learning all of these things. And when I jumped on, there was one thing that I wanted to mention that was about the neurodivergence, is that there's an aspect with neurodivergence that I would say a lot of people don't understand, and it's called RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So I have huge anxiety and fear over placing boundaries because of my abandonment issues mixed with the rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which then if I place a boundary, somebody's going to leave my life. And do I want that person to leave my life? So that has always been the first question up until starting to attend Needing a Meeting and realizing these boundaries need to be there and starting to get some of that peer support from you guys. That was my first thought, versus what boundary do I need to place? How am I going to place this boundary? What am I going to follow through with as an action if this boundary is crossed? Am I okay with that action? Is that action too much? Because if I don't follow through, they're going to keep like bouncing over my boundaries or just bulldozing it.
Sure.
Right? So those two aspects for a neurodivergent coming together, it's very hard with boundaries. And then a lot of the time you just don't, I can't say a lot of the time, in my experience, I didn't know that they were needed. I didn't know that saying no was okay. Or even as we had put up earlier, you know, I didn't know that no was a complete sentence. I thought you had to explain everything in great detail. And it hasn't been until the last 6 months that all of this is starting to click for me and starting to make sense.
That's great though.
It's, you know what, it's a great feeling. It is very empowering to be able to say, no, I don't want to. Or even just, you know, Christy and I were talking earlier, and she's like, how can I make your life easier in this aspect? And it's like, well, I don't want you to break the flow that you're doing. The only thing that I can ask is this, you know, not asking for something that would damage the final product, but at the same time saying, I could use help in this if you're able to. If not, it's okay. You know, I can watch it at 1.5 speed, which is hilarious, by the way. I suggest everybody do it.
Just because they talk too fast, I'm like,
just doing it. But at the same time, being able just to say, well, if you have a second or if you have time, it would save me some time if you could.
Yeah.
These are all steps I didn't realize were okay to say from childhood. Like this is going all the way back, and some of the things that I'm having to rewire in the last 6 months, I thought was my last situation for a really long time, and then realized, nope, that was present with my daughter's dad. And then going, but wait, when did that actually start? When do I remember never thinking this? And it's like, oh wait, but I have never not thought it. It's always been there.
Right.
So it was very interesting, Carol, when you were talking earlier too about how as a child, it seems so big, right? And how is it that not other people are noticing? And that's how I could relate with that, because it was like, how do people not see I'm overwhelmed? How do people not see that I'm doing too much, or I'm thinking too much? So I could relate with that as well, but just in the aspect of the doing too much or thinking too much aspect. But those were my points. I just wanted to mention the neurodivergence part.
No, that's a good part, because neurodivergence is something that I'm learning about, and I probably have known a lot of neurodivergent people in my lifetime, but because of my age, it wasn't really, I don't want to say it wasn't a thing, but like nobody really knew some of these medical God, how do I say it? Medical conditions, like we just didn't know about it when I was younger. Like even when my oldest daughter was younger, OCD wasn't even really like a thing people talked about. She has had OCD and anxiety her whole life. I didn't know it. I thought she just was like nervous because she didn't want to go to her dad's. I didn't understand that like this was much deeper than that. And I think for me, oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say this, being from an older generation, because I am, it's interesting to learn it because, you know, has it always been there? Have I always seen it and just not recognized that that's what it was? And then how do I, you know, how do I help people in those situations feel successful? Feel like they can set boundaries and not be overwhelmed and you know, how do I learn? So, you know, I learned so much from all of this connection that I had no idea about or didn't understand. I'm still understanding. So if I say anything and it's out of line or it's wrong, please forgive me because it's not coming from a place of malice. It's just coming from, you know, just really, it's Christy. She's old. She's crazy. Who knows? You know.
Well, and there's also the aspect of like, if specifically for neurodivergence, the lost generation of girls, specifically the lost generation of girls. There is a time frame, and it wasn't until very recently that autism and ADHD was actually studied in females. So they expected females to present as males, and we present opposite. We're all internal. All of our hyperactivity is internal in our brain, whereas with boys, it's all external. Girls do have some external signs, and they're called like it would be the same as like if an individual was autistic and they're overstimulated, they have a movement or something that they do. It's the same for ADHD individuals. For me, I do this. I flick my nails or I rub my feet together, and rubbing my feet together is like specifically called cricketing. So when I'm overwhelmed, I start cricketing. That's my way of like me knowing, okay, I'm overstimulated, I'm overwhelmed. What can I do to start bringing it back a little bit? And for the longest time, I thought it was just something I did. Like I would do it all night in my sleep. I'd wake up, my legs were exhausted. And until recently, understanding boundaries, saying no, making sure I'm not overwhelmed, it's become much less.
Right on.
So there's some aspects there too that we guess there's some similarities between boys and girls, but we do represent very differently. And so the reason that's where I was going, that would be my squirrel brain kicking in, sorry. The place I was going with that was like, Christy, it's like, don't feel bad about it either, because there's a whole section of individuals that have just been forgotten about being diagnosed on this, or we're expected to look one way. And it isn't until later in life, 30s, 40s, 50s is when women are getting diagnosed for ADHD and autism. Because finally now it's come to the forefront, we don't present the same way.
Right
Isn't that interesting that it took so long for that to understand? But that makes sense, because I think probably my oldest daughter falls in that category, because I didn't know. I've apologized to her so many times. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. She's like, well, how could you? Nope, nobody did. But as a mom, it made you feel bad because you feel like you failed. You feel like you failed your child. Like you see all of the things that are available now, and of course they weren't available then. And you know, there's you have to understand that just wasn't an option for you. You weren't a horrible mom. Like it literally wasn't a thing. But I can see my part in it where I didn't necessarily help because I didn't understand, you know. And so, you know, I think that's, you know, if I could have anything, if I could wave my pen and make anything, it would be that everybody could feel comfortable in their own skin. Like whatever you've got going on, you know, like everybody's mind looks different, it functions different, it flows different, the way you handle things is different. And I just really wish that everybody could just feel confident, trusting, and comfortable in themselves. And like my goal in life is to help people get there. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it, but like that's because I think when people are that way, then they bring so much more. And I feel like there's so much suppression, from a lot of things, like, suppression that you put on yourself, or, however that looks. And is it ever going to go away? No, not completely. But I think if we can work together to manage it and be better people, then we'll be better friends. And I mean, there's 4 women on the screen here. So moms, brothers, sisters, whatever. But it can't be an easy place to get to. Like, I think there's a lot of conversations and understanding and compassion that needs to come. And again, that's why I'm so thankful for everybody and for this very diverse group of people, because I'm learning something all the time and I love to learn. And the fact that I'm 48 years old and I'm still learning some of this stuff is amazing. I'm not somebody who's afraid to say their age. I'm proud I made it here. There was real periods in my life where I didn't know that I would have. And I'm serious. Weighing 89 pounds, what does life look like for you? I mean, it's a serious thought. And so, I'm so thankful to everybody who's teaching me every day, because I'm learning, I think it's a good thing.
And I feel the exact same way. It's there's lots of things that I'm learning later on in life. And if it wasn't for this connection thing, as it's been said before, I don't think that I would be learning as quickly and actually keeping the knowledge. It's not just in one ear out the other this time, because I know I've heard some of this before. I know I have, but it's not just in one ear out the other this time. It's really a lot of that self-work that I think I just wanted to avoid, to be perfectly honest. I think I just wanted to avoid, and factor of survival mode too. I have to also take that into consideration.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Y'all ever have deja vu?
Oh, all the time.
I'm having it right now.
I can see the look on your face. I was going to ask you, be like, what's going through your mind right now?
Yeah, it's just, you can't quite put your finger on it, or at least that's how it is for me. But yeah, anyways, nice to be here with y'all. I'm back.
You're good. It's okay. It's okay. Well, we are at 1 hour and 30 minutes, and I have got to do something with these 4 babies. They probably need to go OUT, because, we spell the important words around here. They probably need to go OUT and go on a WALK. But before we go, one of the things, I love ending my show this way. I would love each one of you. We'll start with Carol. Then we'll go to Tara and go to Stasia. Final thought for the day. Final thought. Final word. Final something. Like, give us something that you took away from today, or something uplifting and encouraging.
Use this time of connection we've been, this gift that we've been given with the lifeboat, to build up your confidence, because that's where you're going to find the courage to say the no's and have the boundaries.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Tara?
I think we all know what we really need, and it's different in every situation, and it might be different for me today than it is tomorrow. Like today I'm saying yes, tomorrow I might need to say no, or tomorrow I might need to ask for help. But knowing that I know the best thing to do, I might not always know how to do that, but that's what other people are for. Like, I go to my therapist quite often with a list of things, and I'm like, I need help figuring out how to communicate this in the best way. But I know what I need. I just have to ask for help. So that would be my final message for the day, is that I think we all know what we need. It's just a matter of getting it done.
Right.
I love that. I love that. All right, Stasia?
Okay, so it kind of falls in line with the 2 of them. It's just, it's never too late to start doing either one of these things, connecting or asking for help. So, and I think that I'm a great example of that. And it's never too late to be able to start healing yourself.
Right. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you, ladies. I want all of you to stay on screen. Stasia will do her thing. Thank you so much, everybody in the chat. This was a first we multi-streamed, so I'm super excited about that. And Tara, when we get it figured out with StreamYard, I'd love to multi-stream with you. We've got a lot of really cool things coming up. So I think, Stasia, if you want to toggle everybody off, I'll say goodbyes, and then you guys stay on. I want to chat with you afterwards. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here for this really important conversation. You know, I love connecting and learning, and I think it's just such a beautiful opportunity that we can have when we all come together. We've got some really exciting stuff coming up. We are going to be talking about self-care on Thursday. I'm going to get a chance to set up an interview with Tara, and that's going to be part of the Beyond the Boat series, as well as Stasia and Carol. So we've got some really exciting things coming, so please stay tuned. Make sure that you click the all so you get all of the notifications. And, you know, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share if this content can help anybody. You know, share that. And I just appreciate you all so much. Don't forget, tune into the Lifeboat right now. I believe that's still at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And make sure to tune into Tara's channel. It's Tara Smiling. You can find it on YouTube. She's got amazing content over there. So give her a sub and check out her stuff. She's really great, doing a lot of really good stuff. Meeting and Meeting goes live Monday through Friday at 3:40 Central Time. That is an amazing place to come and get some real good connection. And I'm just kind of sporadic. So I try to drop comment on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, usually not so much on the weekends or Mondays. But thank you all for being here. I've appreciated you so much. Have a great day, guys. Take care.